I reckon it could be Highlander again. They might put Highlander rework back into the testing grounds. Because he had a lot of issues with him in last time, so there was a lot of issues, so yeah. Maybe we're going to see Highlander back in there with some changes. And maybe some other things as well, let's hope. Interesting to see. Oh. Warden rework though. Nah. Warden buff TG? Nah. Stop it. Stop getting my hopes up. Yeah, I reckon it's going to be Highlander. I don't know if they're going to add others though. Let's find out. They still haven't fixed the Centurion full punch where you can double dodge it? Yeah, that's unfortunate. That definitely needs changing, man. What do you guys reckon is going to be in the testing grounds? You reckon they're going to do some reworks as well as Highlander?
And we're back.
No, we're going to find out.
With Mr. JC.
Yes, hello.
Yes, the savior of balance.
I am.
I'm going to find out.
I also, I want to say, I didn't know Nolan before. I still don't know who you are.
Oh, I'm Brian.
You're Brian? Okay, well, nice to meet you, Brian.
Hey, what's up?
Awesome, yeah.
Yeah. So we've got a testing grounds coming December 14th through December 21st. Quick note. Later in the show, you're going to see an asset that says the 24th. That's wrong. It's the 21st. It's the 21st. We donked. But, it's okay. It's just
it's not coming on season launch, the 7th?
So it's the 17th, 14th through the 21st.
Okay.
But yeah, let's just dive right into it. And
Peacekeeper, Medjay, and Highlander.
What can we expect in
oh
this
my God,
TG?
Peacekeeper.
Yeah, I know, but they
Holy
don't,
fuck.
and I'm pumped, and we need to get them pumped.
That's the problem, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Holy
So,
shit.
so in this round, we're doing 3 things, right? We're doing some Peacekeeper changes.
Yes.
Doing some Medjay changes.
About time.
And we're
God,
doing
Medjay.
Highlander round 2, right? So I'll go over it as we go. We'll start with Peacekeeper, right? Because we want to see.
Damn, let's go.
So Peacekeeper right now is pretty good in duels, right? Like she has
beast in duels.
Yeah, she's a beast in duels, right? Like she has like pretty good offense.
Yeah, she's all right.
At least when I'm playing against
right,
her.
yeah, of course, of course. Okay, but the thing is, when you're playing Dominion, when you're playing like more like team fight game modes, basically, right? Anything you have like team fights going, she struggles from external quite a bit because she relies on her bleed. And so because she relies on her bleed, and the only way to effectively apply bleed is really going to be through guard break, or maybe if you're lucky, you can peel with into a deep gouge. We've done something a little bit different with Peacekeeper, right? So we've added a new move to her, which is a front dodge bash. But as you'll see, it is slower, right? So right now it's 766 MS. You can do it at 100 MS to 500.
I hope you can feint that.
It doesn't chain on miss, so if I go here and I miss, well, I didn't miss, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't chain on miss. And when it lands, it guarantees a deep gouge, which bleeds your
the
opponent.
bleed.
And
we
this
get
is
bleed
not
off
variable
it.
timed, right?
This is not variable time, right? So it's a straight 766 right now. We did this because we didn't want her to have a bash from neutral in one.
Peacekeeper getting a bash, bro.
Her offense
oh my
still
God.
quite works, right? So this works well. All that sort of stuff kind of is good. She has good ways to defend
Who would've
herself
thought?
to apply bleed. But like I said before, when you're outnumbered, when you're external from
Let
opponent,
them
you could just
cook.
block external towards your way, and then Peacekeeper was like, well, I can't do anything. I can't apply bleed, right? So by having a slower bash, you can still use it. You can rely on your teammates to let you guarantee it. You can rely on a bunch of different things to make sure that it lands. We've seen it land a ton. Like if you look at Medjay, for example, the front dodge bash when you're in staff mode is super slow, slower than this.
Oh, so it's
lands
not
very
feintable.
reliably. We want this to be the same here.
So it's mainly
there's a lot of
for
ways to make it
4v4s.
guaranteed. And
It's a
this
tool for
really
4s, not
opens up
duels.
Peacekeeper, because when you do land it, you get your deep gouge, they're bleeding, and then you go to town like you usually do, right? You get your unblockable heavy finishers, you get all that good stuff. That's super, super cool. Lets her open up opponents way better.
Without making it like too useful.
Exactly, right? Because
I like that.
Also, the thing is, like Peacekeeper has been like she's not really necessarily a really bash character, so we wanted to make sure that she doesn't rely on bashes in 1v1 specifically. So that's kind of like the thing. We wanted to keep the flavor of the hero quite a bit with those stabs on that sort of stuff, so that kind of works.
Put a tool in the kit there for when she's
Exactly right. It's a very, very, very targeted tool for very specific situations.
Yeah.
The other thing
it's
to
not
note
a
is that this animation right now is placeholder. It is not the final animation. The animation team is super hard at work into making it look even better. So we can get feedback on this if you want, but it'll change.
I think a few people in chat have mentioned it already.
Yeah,
that's
probably.
Don't worry.
Yeah, so let me do it again here. So yeah, you get this.
It'll be different.
That's cool.
It'll be different. Don't worry about it, right? So a couple of other changes to Peacekeeper as well. So it's going to be a bit hard here to show it, but we've also adjusted the trajectories. They detect the weapon trajectories of her side heavies. So because of this now, like these attacks hit further out, a little bit flatter. So she's going to be able to defend herself better when she's outnumbered. Again,
nice.
same thing as we
So
had
buff
with
the hitboxes of the heavies.
what we talked about just earlier, where having those slightly larger trajectories really helps in keeping opponents off of you.
That makes sense. She's got an arming sword.
Yeah, exactly, right? So that kind of makes sense there.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Cool.
Another thing that we've done, I don't know if you remember, way back when, we did a change.
The time before time.
In the time before time, right?
Yeah.
Where we changed the input on her deflect attack, right?
Oh.
It used to be on light, and we put it on heavy. And the reasoning was, well, you kind of had the option select, like do like light heavy whenever you did a dodge to make sure it would land, you would go into it. And it felt kind of like a bit odd. But then looking back at it, like we've been looking back at it, we've been wanting to do this for a while, because it's an attack that bleeds, all of her attacks that bleed come from
Oh, they're changing it back
dagger.
to light?
Her dagger is always on the light attack button. So we've actually reverted this, and now it's back onto the light button input. I know a certain Frozen person that's probably in chat right now that is ecstatic about this change.
Everybody's favorite Bond villains jumping up and down right now.
So that's great. So we did that change. It's going to be awesome. It really it feels better with the character as well. It makes it's a lot more in line with what she does.
I'm going to have to get used to that again, though.
Well, it's one of a list of reasons why I'm trash with PK. Because I
Exactly.
could never get the deflect thing.
Next up, we have zone attack. So zone attack, we've lowered the cost of the initial hit. It used to cost 40, then 10. Now it costs 20 plus 10.
Oh,
Again,
nice. Stamina buff for the zone.
love to see
Thank God.
that. Yeah, it's always good.
Stamina in this economy?
Yeah, right. How does that work? Okay, so that's there. Again, you'll be able to use your zone attack a lot more often. Really good part of her mix-up as well. The second hit is unblockable when you're bleeding. So again, adds a lot of pressure. Super cool. And then finally, with Peacekeeper, the last thing we've done is we've removed the strict input requirements on her stabs when she guard breaks and on deep gouge. So for example, here, right? I'm not that good at the time these or whatever. Now I can just go mash.
Nice.
Right? And it works, no problem. Same for deep gouge, right? I can mash it and it's going to come out. Before, if you mashed it, it really didn't come out. It's good because it's a lot easier to input. But at the same time, if you still want to do, stab into a throw, for example, right? You can do throwing.
Nice.
If you mash it, your third stab is going to come out. So you still have to have a bit more of the input, the clean of I'm going to do tap and doing it.
Gotcha.
But at least it makes it a lot more accessible to just mash it.
You don't have to have the timing specific, but it's not going to let you throw in 8 inputs to light and then still follow up with your kick.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So that's the important.
So you still have to get the number right.
Yeah.
You just don't have to also 50-pound brain it.
Yeah. Well, it's the same we did with Shinobi, right? Shinobi has the same type of thing when you do.
I'm happy about the zone changes.
We removed the input, the strict input requirements for doing those tabs. But at the same time, if you want to do stab into backflip because you get better frame advantage, for example, you still have to do it consciously and not just mash and then try to do something, right? It happens to me all the time. So I'm well aware of how bad I am at this. That's kind of good there.
I still won't be able to do it.
Right.
Something fell.
Something fell, doesn't matter. Yeah, so that's it for Peacekeeper. So now let's go look at Medjay.
Yeah.
Right? So Medjay is a super cool hero.
Did you see the dev cheats menu?
There's been
White boy.
Yeah, right, the white boy. There's something that I think
very
a lot of people have been requesting for a long time, right?
Huh?
Don't you remember when we launched even people oh, I wish I could switch modes constantly in the middle of a fight because I don't like having to do back and guard break to switch and I'm kind of stuck and I can't do anything.
Yeah, huge point of feedback. I want to be able to just
Exactly, right?
between
guess
modes.
what? We did it. So now Medjay has a new move that is accessible from either staff mode or axe mode, which is performed with zone attack. So after any attack that Medjay does, if you do zone attack, you switch modes and you go into this, right? It counts as a heavy. So if I go into a heavy afterwards, like if I go into like back into staff mode, I go heavy, zone into a heavy, I go into my heavy finisher. If I go into light, I go into my chain lights, right? So it really counts as a heavy. So your next heavy that you perform, like if you do another heavy right after that zone attack, is going to be the one with the special properties.
Okay.
So in staff, is going to be like the interval stance. If you're in axe, it's going to be the unblockable one. That's kind of like the idea here. We really wanted to make sure that you had that flow. And also what's kind of cool is you can go and zone into zone.
That's constantly
switch as much as you want.
Raffle
Holy
goes
shit.
whoosh, whoosh, whoosh,
You can go kind of nuts, but that's kind of interesting, right? So you can it really adds a lot to this flow and really go into, you can go ham in what you want to do, but it's also super cool, right? You're able to
Nice.
Fucking Beyblade time.
on top of this, we've also removed the armor, the uninterruptible stance on staff mode, chain lights and chain light finishers. Mostly because we want to make sure that Medjay has, when you're in staff mode, like it's super strong, right? You have like those big trajectories, and you had that uninterruptible stance constantly.
Helicopter.
And so it made the hero super difficult to peel when and Medjay didn't really have to think. You just did like light, heavy, light, heavy, light, heavy. You didn't really care. But now, because of this, you need to be smarter into how you play and be more aware of what's going on around you, because you will be peeled if you use your light attacks. Like most players are going to be able to be good enough to hit you right in those in between those little timings, so that you have to be a lot more conscious as to what you're going to be doing. So it's a bit of a nerf here, but it's I think a well-deserved nerf.
Yeah.
Like staff mode has been like
I agree.
For a while, so that was
I agree. Well-deserved
nerf. And last but not
indeed.
least, the light finisher in axe mode is now undodgeable. Right?
Oh.
So you can see the little blue spark here. So the idea here is that when you do a bash into a light, right? So that's cool. That kind of works as usual.
Yeah.
But then you had a situation where your opponent could just mash dodge, get out of your light and your heavy, right? You chain heavy or your light finisher.
Yeah.
And so we had
really annoying. For
right. It's super annoying, right? Because then the offense that the hero has was not as strong as it should have been. And so we had to choose between putting undodgeable on the light finisher or on the chain heavy. And we decided to put it on the light finisher because we really wanted to keep that identity of the hero of when you're in axe mode, when you do heavies, the only property you really get is unblockable at the end. And it became like super rainbow, like, like Christmas tree-ish, even though it's kind of the season. But like you would get blue into orange and getting all those kind of crazy things. So instead we put it on light finishers. It also emphasizes the fact that as a Medjay, if you do this, right, light, we're back to neutral. I'm frame disadvantage. I still have to reopen up my opponents. I still have to get into it. But I did get damage.
Good.
I did beat their bash.
Because people just pre-dodge next bash.
And very, very good option as well.
Yeah.
It's hard to, it's not super easy for everybody to react to, even though they're 500 MS lights. You still have
the
to
light's going to hit, so that's good.
The heavies still work. Heavy feint to guard break, heavy feint to parry still works. All that sort of stuff works. But I really want to make sure that
easy defense.
You had that option now. So you have more guaranteed damage. You're scared. Your opponent's going to be scared of dodging. And if they're scared of dodging, it means your heavies are probably going to land more if they're blocked. Then if they're blocked, you get access to your finisher. All those kind of things that kind of fall into place a lot better for the hero. So that's the idea here for Medjay.
Kind of the TLDR should feel a lot better to play, a lot more fluid, but a little easier to crack.
Exactly, right.
And solve some of those pain points of fighting against Medjay.
Exactly, right. So that's the big thing here. And I love that now you can go that into an unblockable and get that super cool flow. It's amazing. So can't wait for people to figure that out. It's gonna be really cool.
Interesting stuff.
All right, so that's it for Medjay, and then let's go to Highlander. So we've done Highlander testing grounds in the past, and it was.
This is going to be interesting.
Right? We talked about it before. There's a lot of good stuff, and there's some things that we've received a lot of feedback about that players weren't super happy about, which is totally understandable.
Yeah.
So what we've done with Highlander is we decided to do a second pass, address the more problematic parts of what we had in the first testing grounds, but at the same time keep a lot, because everything that kind of worked, we kept because it still made sense, right? So what we're going to be talking about right now, what I'm going to be like explaining, is if I don't talk about it, is the same as it was in the first testing round.
So if we don't mention it today, it means we didn't touch it.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So first off, we have offensive form. So when you're in offensive form, we had side dodge keyboard toss, right? That we were like, yeah, it's kind of cool, you know, it kind of feels good. But at the same time, it was kind of problematic because it unbalances, because it it had too many issues, right? You would unbalance somebody, so you got your guaranteed heavy afterwards, which is, you know, what kind of Highlander was kind of about on live right now. But at the same time, because it unbalances people, you had allies that can go and just go, somebody's on the ground, let's, you know, hit them for all we've got constantly. If you had a Yorm or a Centurion nearby, it's like, well, guess what? You're dead.
Yeah, you're gonna get jumped
off of a defensive maneuver, which is not something that we really wanted to have. So instead, what we've done is we've added a new side dodge attack, which is on heavy. So if you side dodge and you release heavy, you go into a dodge attack. Right now, we put animation of the defensive form side dodge attack. This is also placeholder.
Yep.
It's getting reworked. It's similar-ish because we still want to have like trajectories and stuff, and we're still able to hit people externally. But at the same time, like it's a lot safer. It lets us balance the damage of it as well quite well, because it's on a heavy, it can execute, so that's kind of good. But it doesn't need to deal like upwards, like close to 30 damage, just because you managed to do a side dodge and got into something. So that's like one of the big changes we've done here.
And for the
they nerfed
for the animation
G-strat. Good.
Just to make sure everyone heard it, placeholder animation.
Yeah, placeholder, right? This is the exact same animation as we have on defensive form, rather. Sorry. But it is getting changed. So that's that's good.
Nice. Okay. So that's going to get new animations.
Nice. It also kind of fast falls back into offensive stance as much as you want. You can go into like.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that, though. To be fair.
So it's all the usual stuff that we have, but really to have that aspect of a side dodge attack here, as I
know people like new stuff though, so.
Nice.
With this, we still kept keyboard toss on the front dodge, right? But we have removed the change we had done. We reverted it.
We got a lot of feedback.
Yeah, we got a lot of feedback on this where like we sped it up, right? We had sped it up because it was landing much more often. And so getting stuck in that animation constantly didn't feel super good. So we've reverted it. So now it's back to the timing we had before, right? So you grab him, Highlander lovingly looks into your eyes before he chucks it down. So, but that's one of the feedback we've got. Like I remember seeing that feedback a ton from people.
Yeah, we saw feedback on both sides. Both like it doesn't feel good to be in this all the time, and also from Highlander mains saying, like I missed that moment of like gotcha.
Yeah,
like,
right.
You know.
So we reverted that specifically to make sure that we were good for this. Another change that we've done is that top line defensive stance is 400 MS. It used to be 5, so now it's 4. So you have that 400 MS into every single stance now. That's great. It's, you know, very, very good unreactable offense. It's enhanced, right? So you're like, well,
I love the pommel bonk every time. It doesn't matter,
right?
Any hero.
I'm gonna hate fighting Highlanders even more now.
Yeah, that's great. Next up, we have zone attack. So it's kind of hard to show right now, but we've adjusted it with trajectories on his zone attack as well, so that you're able to hit minions and opponents more reliably externally. There was some issues with it that we actually managed to resolve, so it should be a lot more reliable at hitting people outside. I know I had a lot of players send me videos of I'm doing zone attacks and then the sword
and it's just swooshing through
like minions and stuff. So that should be all fixed right now. And then the last change that we've done might be a little bit hard to show, but basically we want Highlander to be able to enter offensive form a little bit easier, right? And have less risk to do it. So we still have the I throw a heavy, I feint into offensive stance. That's great. But then from neutral, if you hold heavy, you go into it, but it takes a long time.
Yeah.
And so at higher levels, at most levels actually, if you see a Highlander doing this, you could just light them out of it every single time. You see him enter, you light it, right? That's why those backstep lights were necessary, because you had to backstep into offensive stance.
Yeah.
So you would be safer.
Otherwise, every Nobu on the planet's going to poop.
Exactly. So what we've done is something a little bit tricky where you can now cancel the entry of offensive form from neutral 266 MS earlier. You can do it into a dodge. So normally if you look at the time it takes for me to like go heavy and then before I'm in, or I can do whole and then dodge a little bit earlier. And so from our testing internally, from what we've been looking at, It means that your opponents can no longer just randomly throw a light when they see you enter it, because you can go dodge into it's like a dodge into a side dodge attack, for example, and you're going to beat their light, their recovery, everything there. So it should make entering offensive form from
That's going to
neutral
help a little
also safer here, right? It's still a read. If you don't want to dodge, then your opponents have to do something else, but they can still guard break you. But if they try to guard break you, you can just go into this and they're kind of screwed. So you still have options in these situations, but it lets you go into it a little bit safer even when you're closer, so your opponents can't just light you out of it constantly.
Well, it still maintains that like highly technical.
Yeah, of course, right?
Highlander.
Yeah, because if I want to go into like this, right, I have to go dodge, do it. So it's tricky, like the holding, not holding, mashing, dodge, get into it. So we still want to have that feeling of the inputs are tricky on Highlander. You have to use like your giant brain to be able to like and there's a lot of muscle memory involved in it, right? So that you go, I have to hold, not hold, and like get
Highlander's
those,
just like
movements. But
full muscle memory.
Again,
man.
it's one of those things that we're comfortable giving Highlander slightly more complicated inputs.
It's very hard to
because
learn.
You have those higher reward situations, and we really want to make sure that Highlander had those options to get into offensive form and really be able to go from defensive to offensive to defensive to offensive, kind of like what we have with Medjay, right? Where you have those two modes, except
maybe you don't
going
have
into
to
them with
dodge
Highlander
attack.
is a lot more complex because you have to hold, you have to do all these crazy things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like Highlander.
That's just if you see like them light or something.
Because they're like, we want some love for our hero, but don't you dare dumb it down.
Yeah, right.
And so they love the pain.
Yeah,
They're like, no, I want to have to like, get
Yeah,
it
they don't
on
want
in
to take
there.
away
And so
Highlander's
this
identity,
should
which is good.
satisfy that.
Definitely. So that's what we have for Highlander. Again, as usual, like I'm gonna be scouring, the usual places when the reworks go live.
Be there with you.
We'll have a lot of people to talk to. It's gonna be super interesting, and we'll figure out where we go from there. But hopefully, this will help fix the major issues a lot of players have with Highlander. Get into it a little bit better, and again, we can be able to release this rework to the general. Have a lot of super good fun. So again, leave feedback.
Yes,
you love
please,
it,
wherever.
leave it. If you don't like it, tell me.
Because we read
okay.
all the things.
Yeah, we do.
I'm gonna jump on a soapbox real quick.
How do you Highlander mains feel?
We see a lot of
about
times
that?
like, oh, you guys only listen to Reddit. It's
Fucking ice
literally
cream
not
van.
true.
Fuck off,
I
you
read
twat.
every comment on every social media, everywhere, all the time.
Yeah.
From YouTube comments to Instagram to Twitter to TikTok to Reddit. Like, we're really looking at everywhere you guys are talking at us.
And it's not like you said. I like that you mentioned it, but it's not just Reddit, right? Like, we look at everything, and it's more your job, but I love doing it too because I get that direct connection with the players, and sometimes it gets personal, but it's also interesting. But we look at everything. I don't want people to just think, we just look at Reddit, right? It's just like you said, we look at Reddit, we look at like YouTube comments, stuff on Instagram, stuff on like the official forums, like absolutely everything everywhere. We talk to pros also. Like we have some, we can talk to them a little bit. We can ask them questions. We can get stuff. So it's not just we're looking at Reddit and we're looking at people on Reddit on the main subreddit, right? We look at the main one. We look at the competitive one. We look at everything.
I even read For Honor rants,
right?
Which is
that I commend you for this.
Yeah, it gives me and my therapist something to talk about.
Right, that's the thing. But yeah, but we do look at all the feedback constantly. We get reports from you guys as well. So it's super important that we always have a survey as well that we look at. So there's a lot of sources of feedback. Give us your feedback.
Yeah.
This is how we kind of get to be able to gauge where we're at. And sometimes actually a lot of the time we look at it and go, this worked, this didn't work. And like I said, we're human, right? Sometimes I go, this is going to be super cool. And then
and it just doesn't
side
work
dodge
out.
came across. Like I'm telling you, we were looking at it, like, this is actually pretty cool. It kind of fits with what we had before, which was, you had a side dodge into kick, you had a guaranteed heavy. We wanted to keep that kind of feeling going. And we're like, okay, it's kind of cool. And then it goes out to a lot of players. And it's like, actually, it's cool, but it's a bit too strong.
If I had a nickel for every time in my life, I was like, no, I'm dead sure this is exactly how this is going to go down. And then it didn't work out. I'd have a shitload of nickels.
Exactly, right? You'd be super rich.
Yeah.
You wouldn't even be able to walk anymore.
I could afford a sandwich.
Well, that's the whole point of testing grounds, isn't it?
No,
to
but
test things, right?
it's we read your feedback wherever you put it, so it's always fun and a little ironic when I'm like reading Instagram comments and they're like, they only read Reddit, and I'm like, then how did I read this?
How did I read this?
Anyway, so please leave us your feedback wherever. Obviously, we're gonna have a TG mega thread that will start up on the 14th. So you can leave your comments there.
Nice.
But if you come across like a little
It's
video
gonna be a fun
segment
week.
on the TG on Instagram, give your feedback.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna give it to the man. So
Exactly.
anyway, I'll get off my soapbox.
All good. Just to end this on my side, right? I want to give big props to Noel, one of the designers on our team who worked super hard on all of this. We all work together on this, right? We're always giving feedback. It's as a
Reddit
team,
is terrible.
but generally we have like one designer
It's
that
not all
works
terrible,
harder
though.
at
There's some
integrating the
good
changes.
things.
And so this time it was Noel did an amazing job. So thank you very much. Yeah, thanks to the whole team. But Noel did
All right.
amazing on this. So.
So that's that.
All right. Well, just to remind you guys again, TG will be live December 14th through